questions on Buddhism. Okay. So where were we? 20. Acha, हाँ. How is Chanikvad a logical derivative of Pratit Samutpad in Buddhism? Explain. So we have already seen Pratit Samutpad is the central tenet, and almost all other important positions are corollaries. They are a derivative of that. तो कैसे establish करेंगे? Since Pratit Samutpad means everything depends on the condition. Everything is dependent. Everything is dependent. Everything is conditioned. This being that arises. That means, but Chanikvad means impermanence. So if everything depends upon condition, then impermanence is relative. Okay. So even if you go to your handout or Chanikvad, you will see it almost like an answer. जैसे मैं पढ़ता हूँ, आपका heading है, एक handout है Chanikvad, the doctrine of momentariness. तो जैसे क्वेश्चन है बिल्कुल उसी हिसाब से लिखा हुआ है. One of the central teachings of the Buddha is the doctrine of universal change and impermanence. The doctrine of Pratit Samutpad implies Chanikvad or Chanbhangvad. The Buddha maintains that all things are subject to change and decay. There is nothing that endures and abides eternally. So you can even change this line slightly according to the question. If you say, the doctrine of Pratit Samutpad implies Chanikvad. Pratit Samutpad suggests the doctrine of universal change and impermanence. It suggests that all things are subject to change and decay. There is nothing that endures and abides eternally. This being that arises. Hence, birth, growth, and decay are the pervading features of existence. Things come into being and pass away. Wherever there is a birth, there is a death. Wherever there is a growth, there is a decay. Wherever there is a meeting, there is an end. Wherever there is a rising, there is a passing away. So you can see that this is almost in the form of answer. As everything originates from some condition, it disappears when the condition ceases to be. If anything exists absolutely and unconditionally, then it is incapable of entering into interaction with anything else. Since to enter into interaction is to undergo change. Accordingly, Chanikvad signifies that everything has a conditional and a non-permanent existence. Things last not even for short periods of time, but exist for one partless moment only. Chanikvad is supplemented by the theory of causal efficiency, Artha Kriya Karitva. A non-existent thing like a hare's horn cannot produce any effect. इस हिसाब से आप इसको emphasize कर सकते हैं. Next is, how does Buddhism explain itself in terms of Panch Skandhas? What is a liberation for Buddhism if there is no soul? तो याद है आपको Panch Skandhas? How does Buddhism explain itself in terms of Panch Skandhas? Can you list down the Panch Skandhas? संज्ञा, संज्ञा, रूप, वेदना, विज्ञान, संस्कार, विज्ञान हो गया. Okay. And then you give the reference of Milind Panha, the questions of King Milind, the dialogue between Nagasen and King Milind, the analogy of chariot, and then you talk about also in this background how it is also rooted in what? Pratit Samutpad. It is also an implication of Udgal Nairatmya. There is no substance. So name is a mere logical aggregate, or name is a mere logical construct. It is a linguistic term. It has no subject. Okay. And then you talk about Krit Pranash, Akrita Bhyagam, and explain it with the analogy of candle flame and the chain. What is liberation for Buddhism if there is no soul? So there is no soul as an eternal substance. But that does not mean there is no identity. That does not mean there is no birth, there is no death, and there is no nirvana. There is a series which is going through cycles of life and which can attain nirvana. So when the series is rooted in ignorance, it is impure. And when it acquires right knowledge, it gets purified. And that is how it can be nirvana. 2019. How do the Yogachar Buddhists deny the existence of the external world? How do the Yogachar Buddhists deny the existence of the external world? यहाँ पे शुभम सिंपल जो बेसिक लिबरेशन वाला टॉपिक है उसी के हिसाब से लिखिए, किसी ट्रेडिशन के हिसाब से नहीं. बाद में बेशक आप थोड़ा सा अरहतवुड बोधिसत्ववुड डिस्कस कर सकते हैं. हाँ, तो how Yogachara deny the existence of the external world? According to them, reality appears like external, but it is actually internal. All that is important and real is Vijnana. Good. The world is atomic and computational. So if we accept external world, the reality of external object, then either it has to be atomic or it has to be composite. Okay, atomic will remain unperceived, and if it is composite, it will have a mini side, and you cannot understand all aspects of it. Consciousness and the object of consciousness are known simultaneously, and if they are given to us together, then consciousness alone is real. However, again, if you go into your pages, there are two places you can find the answer. One is during Sautrantik, and the other one is of course during Yogachar. So अगर Sautrantik में भी आएंगे, so you will see how यहाँ पे if you look at the argument of Sautrantik, they are also arguing against Yogachar. For example, here it is written, the Yogachar claims that since consciousness and its object are simultaneous, they are also identical. And since there can be no experience of objects apart from consciousness, only consciousness is real and not its objects. So this is the view of Yogachar, but Sautrantik will reject it. And again, when you come to the main pages on Yogachara, you will see all their arguments together. Okay? And later you can also talk about that analogy of how a snake may appear in rope, and from Parikalpit, when we come to Paratantra, and again from Paratantra we come to Parinispan, and we are reduced to then Alay Vigyan. इन सब बातों को emphasize करेंगे. They come very close to Berkeley, and the way Moore has argued against Berkeley, Soprantic, Shankar, and others have argued against Yogachar also. Okay, so this was 2019. Next one, again 2019. What is Pratit Samutpad? How do the Buddhists apply this concept to prove that everything is momentary? तो ये वही क्वेश्चन है with which we started, and you have some background. Pratit Samutpad is rooted in second and third noble truth. It implies conditioned and dependent existence of everything, this being that arises. You talk about how it negates the reality of eternalism, nihilism. It implies becoming. It is like a process ontology against the substance ontology. And then you say how Pratit Samutpad have become the foundational principle, whether it is a Chanikavad, whether it is a Sanghatavad, Nairatnavad, Karmavad, all of them are the corollaries. And Nagarjuna thus salutes Buddha for teaching Pratit Samutpad. So Pratit Samutpad is like Dwadas Nidan, the Dharma, the law, the Sansar Chakra, the Bhav Chakra. Knowing Pratit Samutpad is knowing all the basic aspect of Buddha's teachings. And then you can also understand how Pratit Samutpad is like middle path. 2018. How do the Madhyamik Buddhists apply the notion of Pratit Samutpad to establish their doctrine of Sunyata? बताएं.
Everything depends on a condition, according to Pratit Samutpad. So it also means that everything cannot be described by itself, and Sunyata means the things which can be undescribed.
Okay. So you remember, जैसे मैंने कहा नागार्जुना वाली बात, Nagarjuna salutes the Buddha for teaching Pratit Samutpad. Pratit Samutpad implies dependent, conditioned, and relative nature of every positions, every view. So nothing is eternal, absolute, unconditioned, independent, and hence Shunyata implies Sarvadristi Shunyata. And in your elementary pages that you have written on Shunyata Madhyamik, the Madhyamik Karika of Nagarjuna is using Pratit Samutpad, Buddha's silence, and Madhyama Pratipat as the foundational reference points. And from all of this, they suggest that what is real cannot be given any absolute description. So reality is Shunya, as Swabhav Shunya, it is a Prapanch Shunya, it is a Chatushkoti Vinir Mukta. Okay. Also talk about the interesting similarity between the root Shui and Big, and then talk about the implications of Shunyata as well, जो अलग से मैंने आपको लिखाया हुआ है. 2018. Is it consistent for the Buddhists to admit the theory of Nairatnavad and the doctrine of Nirvana simultaneously? Give reasons in favor of your answer. तो क्या है ये consistent? And this is not again a new question. Formulation is different. This is same like we had seen that if there is no Atma, then can there be liberation? And they say, how does Buddhism explain self in terms of Panchaskandhas? What is liberation for Buddhism? So the point is, if there is no Atma, how can they still talk about Nirvana? And you understand that what they negate is one theory, one doctrine, but they do not give up the notion of a personal identity. They very much accept the theory of karma. As you sow, so shall you reap. Their explanation is different from what other traditions have given. And then you talk about that analogy of candle flame, river chain. Emphasize why they think there's no Krit Pranash, there's no Akrita Bhyagam. There may not be a subject over and above the chains, but that does not mean there is no knowledge, there is no memory or recognition. 2017. Elucidate the role of Chatushkoti in explaining the nature of reality according to Madhyamik school of thought. बताइए.
According to them, Parmatma's theoretic absolute truth is beyond this chatur
नहीं. चतुर तो चालाक हो गया. चतुष, हाँ. चतुष्कोटि, हाँ. तो पहले इस चीज को emphasize कीजिए कि what is the significance of Chatushkoti in this regard. So for the Madhyamik school, the nature of reality is such that it cannot be sufficiently described through fourfold classification of judgments. Is not, both is and is not, neither is nor is not, cannot adequately describe the nature of reality. Hence, real is Shunya. Reality or Shunyata can be understood from the perspective of Sansar as Swabhav Shunya, from the perspective of Nirvana as Prapanch Shunya. So thus, real can have different layers, but none of them can ever be understood by us sufficiently. यहाँ पे आप उस समृद्धि सत्य और परमार्थ सत्य की बात कर सकते हैं, मिथ्या समृद्धि की भी बात कर सकते हैं. Then you talk about Buddha's silence and the importance of Madhyama Pratipat in the case of Shunyavad. What are the arguments of the Buddhists to establish Chanikvad? Do they necessarily lead to Kritanash and Akrita Gyupagam? तो Chanikavad, as we had seen, you connect it with Pratit Samutpad, and then you emphasize upon their definition of real. Real need not be eternal, permanent. Real is something which has a causal efficiency, Artha Kriya Kaditva. Now, this aspect is again connected with the same thing. So, if they establish impermanence, Chanikavad, momentariness, so there is no substance. Chanikavad is the same as Pudgal Nairatmya. It is the same as Dharma Nairatmya. Thus, there is no Atma who is eternal, who is immutable, who is immortal. So if there is no Atma which is permanent, it is just a skandh, sanghat, then don't they lead to Kritanash and Akritabhyupagam? यानी समझ में आ रहा ना, ये टर्मिनोलॉजी याद है ना आपको? कृतनाश या कृत प्रनाश, सिमिलरली अकृत्याभ्युपगम या अकृताभ्यागम. ठीक है, तो they have their explanation that no, they don't lead to the fallacies. These two things are like fallacies. Okay, किए हुए कर्मों का फल नष्ट हो जाता है इनके केस में, and बिना किए हुए कर्मों का इनाम या सजा मिलता है. But they explain it through the analogy of chain or candle flame, also river. All right, next one. How do Madhyamikas, Yogacharvadins, and Sarvastivadins differ among themselves concerning the nature of reality? How do Sarvastivadins differ among themselves with regard to knowledgeability of reality? ये बताएं आप मुझे. Prepare bullet points on this, because this can help you again revisit all the important schools. So the one school is still missing. नहीं सारे हो गए और वो तो हमने एक्स्ट्रा कर लिया.
First one.
बोलिए.
According to Yogachar, the reality is based on Vijnana, that is consciousness. According to Madhyamaka tradition, the reality is undescribable. Even the Chatuskoti cannot it's not enough to describe the reality. And according to Sarvastivada, representationism, they propound the theory of representationism, and things are known from inside. The reality is.
थोड़ा सा सर्वास्तिवादिन्स को आपको समझना पड़ेगा फिर से. ओके, तो और कुछ कहना है किसी को? तो you may choose the order. Okay, लेकिन अगर चाहे तो in initial line you follow the sequence of the question and then you go in accordance with the convenience so that you can deal with other aspects of the question. जैसे क्वेश्चन है, how do Madhyamikas, Yogacharvadins and Sarvastivadins differ among themselves concerning the nature of reality? So you may write something in the beginning that for the Madhyamikas, the reality is a shunya. It is beyond fourfold classification of judgment. It is a Chatushkoti Vinirmukt. From the perspective of Sansar, reality or real is Swabhava Shunya, and from the perspective of Sansar, it is Prapancha Shunya. For the Yogacharvadins, Vigyan Matra is real. Consciousness alone is real. All is consciousness. For the Sarvastivadins, conscious, mental, parenthesis mein, and unconscious, extra mental dharmas are both real. They propound realistic and pluralistic metaphysics, या for they accept realism and pluralism. ये बातें पहले आपने लिख दिया, अब आप डेवलप करें further. Nagarjuna, the founder of Madhyamik, take cues from Buddha's silence or indeterminate questions of Vyakrit Prashnas, Pratit Samutpad, and Madhyama Pratipat, and thereby he claims no view about reality can ever be adequate. Hence, he argues for Sarv Drishti Shunyata without accepting any view as ultimate. He claims all views about reality are relative, interdependent, and they are supplementary. There can be no view independent of all other. Hence, he acts through his prasanga method like a Vedantic and remains non-aligned, does not propound a view of his own. अब योगाचार वाला थोड़ा सा आप देख सकते हैं. They argue that external reality, even if it is there, can never be known, as we talked about atomism, composite nature. They believe consciousness is conscious of something, and both of them are known simultaneously. So objects are not outside the mind. The way during a dream, what is in the mind appears like extra mental. Similarly, external reality is not outside but internally inside the mind. अब सर्वास्तिवादिन्स का क्या, इसको अब तोड़ के भी बताइए. So सर्वास्तिवादिन्स suggest real is something that is there in past, present and future. तो कंफ्यूजन जो जैसे मैंने कहा आर्यन के आंसर में मुझे लगा, तो सर्वास्तिवादिन्स आर व्हाट? सर्वास्तिवादिन्स आर संस्कृत काउंटर पार्ट ऑफ थेरावाद, स्थाविरवादिन. जो सबसे पुराना स्कूल है वो है ये. एंड दिस सर्वास्तिवादिन्स हैव टेकन टू डिफरेंट फॉर्म्स इवेंचुअली. तो वैभाषिक एंड सौत्रांतिक आर नॉट डिफरेंट फ्रॉम सर्वास्तिवादिन्स. सो दिस क्वेश्चन इज आस्किंग यू अबाउट देम आल्सो. लास्ट पॉइंट, हाउ डू सर्वास्तिवादिन्स डिफर अमंग देमसेल्व्स? यानी हाउ सर्वास्तिवादिन्स डिफर अमंग देमसेल्व्स का मतलब है हाउ वैभाषिक सौत्रांतिक एज सर्वास्तिवादिन्स डिफर अमंग देमसेल्व्स विद रिगार्ड टू नॉलेजिबिलिटी ऑफ रियलिटी. तो वैभाषिक propounds presentationism, बाह्य प्रत्यक्षवाद, and सौत्रांतिक representationism, bahya anumayavad. And another slight difference is with regard to the nature of dharma. For Sautrantic, you don't know the way dharma is in itself. There is no disappearance. It is like one dharma is replaced by other, and there is nothing like even a momentary existence of a dharma. I have given you the illustration of conveyor belt to understand how Vaibhashik and Sautrantic differ. तो ये पूरा point आपको इसमें cover करना है. 2016. How does Chanikvad strengthen the arguments for Nairatmyavad? So they are all interconnected. The Chanikvad suggests nothing is permanent, everything is impermanent, nothing lasts for more than a moment, and that is same as suggest there is no substance immutable, there is no essence of the substance. So hence it implies Udgal Nairatmya as well as Dharm Nairatmya. 2016. Does the doctrine of dependent origination reconcile the two extreme views on the law of causation, namely Satyakarivad and Asatyakarivad? Give reasons for your answer. सोच के बताइए. Could you get the point? What it is referring to? पकड़ पाए बात? Can you recall when did we discuss Satyakarivad, Asatyakarivad? याद नहीं है अभी? नहीं, इसमें ये नहीं है शुभम, याद कीजिए. एक दिन हमने briefly we talked about it. Recall in what context? Context याद कीजिए, कब डिस्कस किया था, in what context? अच्छा. So when we discuss, this question is asking how Madhyamik, how Nagarjuna would use Pratit Samutpad to reconcile the views Satyakarivad, Asatyakarivad. If you recall, how did we discuss Madhyamik? I told you about Nagarjuna as a text. After brief understanding, we had written what is a Shunyata. And then, while we discussed Shunyata, you had understood he is arguing for Sarva Drishti Shunyata. Every view is a Shunya, as in every view is devoid of ultimate truth. No view, no theory is ultimate. And ironically, they propound their own view and reject all other positions, not realizing that their own view is interdependent, is relative to all other. And he refrains from propounding any drishti of his own. So how he is doing it? He is employing prasanga method, reductio ad absurdum argument, which can be also called a dialectical method या तर्क. So now he जो भी उन्होंने कहा वो demonstration देंगे. There can be a tradition with regard to causation. They propound Satyakarivad. Sat, asat, that exists, karya. So Satyakarivad is what? Karya effect pre-exists in the cause. This is one view. And I told you, we'll see it in Sankhya, we'll see it in Ramanuj, we'll see it in Shankar. The next view is the antithesis. Asatyakarivad. We have seen it in Charvak. It is there in some of the Vaibhashikas or Buddhist schools also. And we will see it shortly when we come to the next one, Nyaya Vaisheshik. So now one who propounds, says Satyakarivad, will reject Asatyakarivad. But his point is that when you take a thesis and you examine the way it leads to absurd positions, if you take only this view, it also takes to absurd view. You cannot accept one and reject the other. All the views about causation are relative, interdependent, supplementary. No view is ever complete. All of them are shunya. तो यही बात माध्यमिक के हिसाब से हम करेंगे. तो जैसे क्वेश्चन है, does the doctrine of dependent origination reconcile the two extreme views on the law of causation, namely Satyakarivad and Asatyakarivad? Give reasons for your answer. तो आप ऐसे बोल सकते हैं, Nagarjuna, the founder of Madhyamik, has argued to suggest that the doctrine of dependent origination reconciles the extreme views on causation, namely Satyakarivad and Asatyakarivad. By employing a prasanga method, he establishes Sarva Drishti Shunyata. तो वही फिर से बातें आ गई that everyone claims that one's own view is absolute, while the fact is all views are relative, interdependent, and one should never accept one's own view as the ultimate absolute. And then we have seen the arguments of what are the main observations against Satyakarivad. Satyakarivad effectively suggests what? Cause and effect are one and the same. If they are one and the same, how will you distinguish between the two? If they are one and the same, then what is true for one should have been true for other. But that is not the case. Seed and a tree, they are completely different. And if they are one and the same, and you have to think about a relation, if you say the relation is causal, then it does not make any sense. The relation remains unexplained or beyond any explanation. If they are different, then anything should come out of anything. Why do we need milk for curd? We need some seeds for oil. We should have been able to convert water into curd. We could have extracted oil from the sand, but that is not the case. The next one is combination, and the fourth option is to reject all position. So Nagarjuna is not a nihilist. He is not rejecting positions without accepting any. He is suggesting that there is no final view that you can articulate. That does not mean he is talking about views being absolutely empty. They are not void. They are devoid. नहीं, he is ऐसे समझ. बाकी लोग एक एक्सेप्ट करेंगे तो बाकी के तीन. One who accepts a second would reject, then third wala will reject, and fourth is rejecting causation as a relation. ये भी एक view है. To say that there's no causal relation is a view, and he refrains from all the view. So he says, one, if you accept one, you have to accept this, you have to accept this. If you accept this, similarly. And if you are going for this, you are going against all reason and logic. All right?
Can we say that he's accepting all the relative?
He's saying, बिल्कुल यही है, जैसे मान लीजिए real है, तो he is saying that this is not the only explanation. This is also the explanation, this is also the explanation, all of them are. But all of them can again not be sufficient. Okay? So you should not think that you have found the truth. It is basically like truth is there, but the description is never sufficient. It is also like niti, not this, not this. This is another way to say every determination is negation. Okay? 2015 आलय विज्ञान. तो it should, जो बोलते हैं दिमाग की बत्ती जलनी चाहिए कि आलय विज्ञान, योगाचार, स्टोर हाउस कॉन्शियसनेस. अगर चाहे तो चार्ट बना के कुछ चीजों को याद रखिएगा. याद है मिथ्या संवृत्ति परमार्थ, परिकल्पित परतंत्र परिनिष्पन्न. When we come to Shankar, we will see प्रातिभासिक, व्यवहारिक and पारमार्थिक. So if you write a few things, so then it can add so much more substance. So आलय विज्ञान is the, और अगर परिनिष्पन्न याद नहीं है तो बोलेंगे this is the absolute level of reality, storehouse consciousness. And then you talk about the three layers. So erroneous cognition like a snake in a rope or dream experience. Then we come to empirical realm and we go from there the transcendental or absolute realm. तो याद ना भी हो term तो erroneous या illusory, empirical and absolute level. 2015, abhi, let me see whether you can relate with it. Our knowledge is confined to gunas alone, quote unquote. Examine this statement in the light of Vaisheshik and Buddhist controversy. So you don't know Vaisheshik, but I did try to put this question into perspective when we were talking about substance attribute. Even during in Madhyamik, we have two important illustrations of Nagarjuna. We had seen how he would reject views pertaining to causation, and then with something like substance, there's something like attribute. For some thinkers or schools, what is real is substance alone. For others, what is real is attributes alone. And for some, both of them are real. And for other, again, nihilism. Okay, so what Nagarjuna would do? Nagarjuna would again talk about no view being the only one. But similarly, if there's something like talking about a unity, other is talking about a diversity, being, becoming, he will refrain from taking any position. So Abhi, I tell you briefly about what is this question pointing towards. But once we come to Vaisheshik, it will make more sense. So some traditions, including Nyaya Vaisheshik, would accept the reality of substance and would accept the reality of quality or attribute. For Nyaya Vaisheshik, the term would be dravya, and for quality, the term would be gun. And as Locke had told you, there's something like matter in the case of Locke. जो भी जानते हैं उसके हिसाब से मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ. So matter is the substance, and matter may have qualities. Later you bishop call them primary and secondary qualities, but for time being, to understand the question, there's something like qualities and there's something like matter. Matter is the substance, and qualities are the supported attributes. So for Locke, in principle, though not possible in practical life, if we take away all the qualities, as we have already seen, primary qualities are inseparable. But for the sake of understanding, when we take away all the qualities, we survive by matter. But matter is always known through qualities. It does not mean they are one and the same. Matter is not defined without qualities, but qualities are different from substance. ठीक है? In the case of Vaisheshik also, same is going to be the case. Dravya will be real, gun will be real. Now, with regard to substance quality, what is the view of Buddhists? When Buddhism is only written, that means it is like the way Sarvastivadins, Hinayana traditions would understand. Vaibhashik बोल सकते हैं इस. तो इसका मतलब है, in the case of Buddhism, there is Udgal Nairatmya, there is Dharma Nairatmya. ठीक है? In some way, while in the case of Vaibhashik, realism, pluralism. In the case of Vaibhashik, also there is realism and pluralism. There is something like dharma. It is mental, vigyan, and it is extra mental, material particles also. But real is not something like Vaisheshik, which is eternal, immutable. For them, real has a causal efficiency, arth, kriya, karitva, and there is no abiding qualities as essence. There is no abiding eternal substratum like dravya. ठीक है? तो ये है दोनों में difference. And this question will resurface in your handouts when we come to न्याय वैशेषिक question. ठीक है? तो अभी आपने partly जितना समझा है, तो basic question क्या है? उद्गल नैरात्म्य, धर्म नैरात्म्य. Okay. 2015. What is the role of Pratit Samutpad in explaining Dukkha? Elucidate the means to overcome it. इसको थोड़ा सा मीनिंगफुली एक लाइन लिखिए. What is the role? लगे किसका आंसर है? What is the role of Pratit Samutpad?
Pratit Samutpad, being the central teaching of Buddha, explains Dukkha by the condition testing that arising. Buddha states that ignorance of Pratit Samutpad is the cause of Dukkha. This can be overcome by the knowledge of four Arisatyas and following the same.
अच्छा है, लेकिन वही what I wanted to know from you that have you read the question properly? तो ये सब चीजें थोड़ा सा ध्यान दीजिएगा. तो उसके बाद यही नॉलेज जो आपके पास है, you'll be able to present it in a better way. बोलिए.
According to Buddhism, Pratit Samutpad means everything depends upon a condition. Nothing is unconditioned. So all the Dukh also depends upon a condition. Dukh arises from ignorance. Dukh arises from Dvesh, Rag, Moh. To liberate from all Dukh is to follow four noble truths, three rules.
सब चीजें ठीक है, but as I had told you, you should write answer तो वही इंफॉर्मेशन है. You should structure it the way question is asking. आप भी ठीक लिख रहे हैं शुभम, लेकिन जो बात मैं बोलना चाह रहा हूँ, जैसे मान लीजिए क्वेश्चन सेज व्हाट इज द रोल ऑफ प्रतीत समुत्पाद इन एक्सप्लेनिंग दुख, elucidate the means to overcome it. तो पहले जितनी इंफॉर्मेशन है ठीक है, पहले 1-2 लाइन क्वेश्चन के हिसाब से लिखें. मान लीजिए आप बोलते हैं प्रतीत समुत्पाद plays a significant role in the explanation of dukh. Not only does it help us understand the cause of dukh, it also gives us the road map to remove it. ये आंसर सही लग रहा है, तो आंसर बनाना है. आप जाइए कि प्रतीत समुत्पाद is contained in second and third noble truth and it helps us realize that ignorance is the root cause of suffering. अब देखिए जैसे अपने नोट्स में है कि impermanence is akin to being sorrowful. अब सब चीजों को जोड़िए. तो हमेशा लिखने में जल्दीबाजी भी नहीं, एंड वी टेक फ्यू थिंग्स फॉर ग्रांटेड कि पढ़ लिए क्वेश्चन समझ में आ गया, लेकिन अगर फिर से क्वेश्चन को समझिएगा तो योर आंसर विल बी मोर ऑथेंटिक. 2014 explain the epistemological differences between Sautrantic and Vaibhashik schools of Buddhism. Epistemological याद रखिएगा फिर से. तो what is the epistemological difference? बाह्य प्रत्यक्षवाद and बाह्य अनुमेयवाद, ठीक है. And then you also talk about their similarity. You understand how Vaibhashik has critiqued Sautrantic. That if you never ever know anything directly, you don't perceive something, how can you, independent of perception, direct knowledge, every time you know indirectly? Unless you have not known something once, how can you accept it indirectly? Okay. तो जो representationism का problem, even in Western philosophy you have seen the way Locke is argued by Berkeley, वो बात भी आप जोड़िएगा इसमें. Next 2014 again. How does Nagarjuna explain the concept of shunyata? To understand his references of Vyakrita Prashnas or Buddha's silence, middle path, that is Madhyama Pratipad and Pratit Samutpad, and then you have all the important points with you in your notes. Explain the Buddhist position of impermanence and show how the idea of impermanence leads to the theory of momentariness of reality. So this is also with reference to Pratit Samutpad, क्षणिकवाद. तो दोनों चीजें impermanence और क्षणिकवाद को जोड़ने को बोल रहे हैं. There is nothing which is absolute permanent to be real. It need not be immutable. Eternal. It should be impermanence. And then you talk about Artha Kriya Karitva, connect them, talk about Udgala Nairatmya, talk about also in this law of karma. Okay. Comment. Accepting Shunyavad makes one indifferent to the pursuit of dharma. Examine in this context Nagarjuna's arguments for Shunyavad. So let me see if you could relate with the question. नहीं, मैंने शुभम आपके आंसर को मैंने बिल्कुल पढ़ा, ठीक है. मैंने कहा था एक लाइन शुरू में ऐसा हो जो लगे कि क्वेश्चन का आंसर आप शुरू कर रहे हैं, ठीक है. तो जहां पे है कि रोल क्या है, तो सिग्निफिकेंट रोल है, 1-2 लाइन इस तरह से लिखिए, ठीक है. स्क्रीन पे दिख जाता है सब, ठीक है. हाँ, तो बताइए, कुड यू रिलेट विद द वर्ड धर्म? नहीं, कॉन्टेक्स्ट में समझिए. नहीं, फिर तो एकदम उल्टा हो जाएगा. This is like empirical object. Okay, in this case, the objects of senses. So when we know shunyata, what do we know? Objects of the world have swabhav, are swabhav shunya. So whatever we are craving, we get to know how trivial, how insignificant it is. So when we know shunyatvad, accepting shunyavad makes one indifferent to the pursuit of dharma, because shunyata enables us to understand that the object of the world are devoid of eternal value. They are too ordinary. They are devoid of swabhav. Okay, so this is like nihswabhavata. वो याद है आपको implications of shunyata? There you will find all of that. So when you know that this object is actually not as important as I think, so that can help you develop a non-clingingness. So when we don't have the knowledge of shunyavad or shunyata, we have a clingingness. We are tied to it. And when you know that it is not that important, you get a bit indifferent to it. I had given you the analogy, sometimes say we think about some person very highly. And when you get to know that actually one is not as good as I thought, one is a fake, तो फिर आप अपना धीरे-धीरे मन उससे दूर हो जाता है. विमुख you will become. So that is like, or sometimes when we get a few things, we no longer have that craving for it. So this is how you should understand. जी. We can understand it easily also. We know only few aspects of things. We can know even more to understand it more better. We need to explore more. Whenever you get satisfied with the knowledge. So basically, as a question in totality has said, and you have written it, that what shunyata can do. Shunyata creates an urge in you to come out of ordinary, trivial matter and seek something that is higher substantially. So that we can create us to understand the things better. हाँ, बिल्कुल. Saying that value of matter is focus on better things. I'm saying that this matter you can understand it more better. So that it is almost like same thing. That when you start to undermine, say, the food, the pleasures of the senses. So you are not negating reality altogether. Your focus is shifting. So rather than think about ice cream, one should be thinking about good governance, ethical governance. Possible. So then it is like create such ice cream that so that one will not get fat, one will not develop disease, and that is also how will it happen? Only when you see it in knowledge, you can create such ice cream. So Buddha's point is that in this case, you can use some word. Let's say that accepting Shunyavad makes one indifferent to the pursuit of the dharma. Examine this context Nagarjuna's arguments for Shunyavad. So among all previous things, with reference to this, you can say, so Shunyavad can have axiological and soteriological significance. So axiological significance is like Shunyavad or Shunyata will be the right word while writing. Shunyata enables me to discern between what is higher value and what is ordinary. So when we understand the ordinary nature, trivial nature of objects of sense, I no longer feel that craving. And now you are inclined towards something substantial. So a friend who may not be that committed to this profession may not be able to study all through night. But one may prefer to go and watch maybe something on OTT all through the night. But if you have to watch and you have your prelims coming, you would prefer preparing for your prelims. But you know that there is something more important than that. So this is how Shunyata helps you remain indifferent, as in clingingness has been undermined. And it is like indifference is more like nishkama. It is like coming out of that rag, moha, dvesh. Knowledge, yes, knowledge is knowledge in Indian tradition. When you know it, you realize that everything is important, but something is more important. That is why I'm giving you this example of OTT watching can also be knowledge, and they're very good shows these days. But what is your priority at a particular point? Accordingly, you feel that this is more important for me. You are no longer addicted to anything when you know Shunyata. That is the implication. 2012. Do you agree with the view that in early Buddhism, more importance was given to Four Noble Truths than to systematic metaphysics? Give reasons for your agreement or disagreement. क्या लग रहा है? Will you agree or not agree? Not agree? Agree. तो अब दोनों चीजें कही है. You agree as well as also not completely agree, because there is a metaphysics also. Okay. And when it is about early Buddhism, it is largely about Vaibhashik, Sautrantik, Sarvastivada. So early as in elders, early as in Theravada, Sthavirvadins. Okay. So they have indeed been giving us guidelines with regard to Four Noble Truths. Even when there is Jhanikavad, there is Nairatmyavad, Artha Kriya Karitva, all of them are in accordance with the Pratit Samutpad. Okay, but then they have also developed metaphysics, realistic and pluralistic realism. Both Vaibhashik, Sautrantik have some important position. They are also countering the view of Yogachar, Vigyanvadins. They have rejected Agal Nairatmya, Dharma Nairatmya, and they have propounded nominalism. All of these are well-developed metaphysical positions also. But in some way, whatever metaphysical positions they have created, for them, they are the corollaries. And Nagarjuna has expressed angst, or he is expressing regret. He is lamenting that Buddhist or all other traditions, including Vaibhashik, Sautrantikas, have developed metaphysics, though Buddha himself had remained silent. तो आपने ये भी लिखा हुआ है अपने नोट्स में कि नागार्जुना ने ये बातें की हैं. Chronologically, योगाचार बाद में आए हैं, तो नागार्जुना के followers हैं, तो they are carrying the legacy, and they will talk about this position of Vigyanvadins also as problematic. Examine critically the statement that the doctrine of Pratit Samutpad, why it is written this way, it is a Pali. The doctrine of Pratit Samutpad was given only to explain the problem of sorrow and not to solve the problems of metaphysics. So who would make such a statement? And this can also help you get some idea about the previous question. Both of them are very much similar. Who has remained without metaphysical view in Buddhism? Nagarjuna. बाकी सब ने metaphysics इधर उधर से बना ही दिया. ना करते करते थोड़ा बहुत metaphysics सब ने बनाया. So if there is one thinker who would always understand Buddha as a physician, not a metaphysician, then who is they? Who are they? Madhyamikas. So this is why I said in previous question, you can again, this is more like a criticism to that view that they have been emphasizing on Four Noble Truths, but their understanding of the Noble Truths culminate into a metaphysics. And Nagarjuna is the only one who remains committed to this position that no, Buddha is not supporting any view. 2011.
But Nagarjuna is saluting.
He is saluting Pratit Samutpad ना, Pratit Samutpad के लिए.
At the same time, how can he say?
तो जैसे ही तो ये बोल रहे हैं बाकी लोगों के लिए. एक तरह से फिर से ये किनको बोल रहे हैं जो पाली में शुरू किए थे. हाँ, Hinayana elders, याद है ना, Mahasangikas are those who have come later and they are expressing disagreement with elders कि अब मान लीजिए डिबेट चल रहा है, वहां पे elders को बोल रहे हैं, तो पाली में बोल रहे हैं, तो उनको पाली में बोलने के तो आपको प्रतीक समझ दिया क्यों गया? 100 हटाने के लिए कि मेटाफिजिक्स बढ़ाने के लिए? तो मेटाफिजिक्स क्यों बनाया आपने? That is the question. Okay. Write a note on Nagarjuna's contribution to Madhyamik school of Buddhism. All of them are same year. Is Shunyavad a philosophical doctrine? नहीं। हाँ, तो फिलोसॉफिकल डॉक्ट्रिन, ये तो कहने का मतलब है कि इसको ऐसे लाइन बना सकते हैं, शून्यवाद cannot be, shall not be characterized as a philosophical doctrine, since the central teaching of Shunyavad is all philosophical doctrine is devoid of ultimate truth. It upholds, propounds सर्वदृष्टि शून्यता. तो जब खुल के उन्होंने बोला है सर्वदृष्टि शून्यता, मैंने आपको एक स्टोरी बना के भी बताई. तो नागार्जुना is propounding Shunyavad as a Vedantic to remind us that you should be a critical thinker, a destroyer of views, not a propounder of view. So you should refrain from accepting any position of your own. Only when you have no view of your own, you can be critical, you can be fair in your outlook and criticism. जैसे आमतौर पे आप देखिएगा, there could be some thinker, some essayist, some author, and you may admire him. Imagine suddenly a party would induct him, or she would join a party, and then you listen to him or her. Immediately you will feel इस इंसान को क्या हो गया, तो वो क्या करेंगे, अब indefensible को defend करेंगे. If one accepts a view, one cannot remain a thoroughgoing critic. Only when you have no view of your own and you remain a seeker, you can remain non-aligned.
Rejecting a view is also
तो वही समझिए कि टर्म क्या है, फिलोसॉफिकल डॉक्ट्रिन. डॉक्ट्रिन का मतलब है थ्योरी. थ्योरी इज व्हाट, ए कंप्लीट आंसर. व्हाई इट इज द वे इट इज द थ्योरी. तो नागार्जुना पूरी तरह से एकदम इस बात पे क्लियर रहे हैं कि मैं कोई व्यू देने नहीं आया हूं. तो आंसर तो लिख सकते हैं बहुत तरह से, लेकिन अगर आप टू बी फेयर टू व्हाट ही इज ट्राइंग टू डू, ही इज सेइंग शून्यता इज व्हाट, orientation and outlook, a critical approach, and you will remain a Vedantic. You will not propound a view. तो इसलिए मैंने कहा कि जब आप इस तरह से जैसे ही लिखेंगे, मैसेज इज क्लियरली कम्युनिकेटेड, यू हैव अंडरस्टूड शून्यता. ये कोई व्यू देने नहीं आए हैं, ये बताने आए हैं कि जैसे कि मेरे भरोसे तो रहना मत. हाँ हाँ, मेरे भरोसे तो रहना मत, क्योंकि मैं कोई व्यू देने आया हूँ नहीं. हाँ, तो हर कोई, जब आपको पता चल जाएगा कि आप किसी के भरोसे नहीं है, तो तब पता चलेगा आत्मदीपो भव. ओके,
अगला क्वेश्चन होता है इज शून्यवाद फिलॉसफी?
एक ही बात है, फिलोसॉफिकल. हाँ, तो फिर से समझिए, अगर मान लीजिए इन जनरल इन क्लासिकल टेक्स्ट सम इज टॉकिंग अबाउट फिलोसफी, तो फिलोसफी वहां पे क्या है, मतलब मेटाफिजिक्स, फर्स्ट फिलोसफी. ओके, तो फिलोसफी अगर सिर्फ लिखा है तो उसका सबसे डोमिनेंट मतलब है मेटाफिजिक्स. ठीक है
सर, इन शून्यवाद वाले से थ्योरी,
शून्यवाद का मतलब है कि थ्योरी ऑफ नो थ्योरी. ठीक है. हाँ, skepticism is, जैसे ह्यूम के दौरान आपने लिखा, skepticism cannot be defined for once and all, and skepticism should always be seen as a tool whereby you discern dogmas, prejudices. So Hume is a skeptic, but not like Pyrrho. He is prescribing more like an academic skepticism. तो आपने सब लिखा भी है. What is he saying? What is the solution of skepticism? Inattention and suspending it in many other realms. जैसे मान लीजिए, when it comes to an academic debate, what is the nature of this object? So he will be skeptical with regard to reality of a matter. But if he has to write with a pen, if he has to play his game, meeting friends, so then he would remain a normal person. अभी academic life नहीं चल रही है. ठीक है. Okay. What is the importance? ये सब बातें आपके नोट्स में क्लियरली लिखा है मैंने, शून्यवाद. तब आप लोगों को कंफ्यूजन नहीं होना चाहिए. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, यू रीड फ्यू लाइन्स अगेन, और आपको जो मैंने लिखाया था उसमें भी पॉइंट है. देखिए, जहां द मेथड ऑफ द डायलेक्टिक है, सेकंड लाइन, द माध्यमिक एंटरटेन्स नो व्यूज, डॉक्ट्रिन्स, थ्योरीज एंड प्रिंसिपल्स ऑफ इट्स ओन टू प्रोपाउंड एंड डिफेंड. प्रोपाउंड का मतलब है कोई थ्योरी बनाना और बना के डिफेंड करना. The starting point of Nagarjuna seems to be Buddha's silence over metaphysical questions. Speculation was forbidden by the master. तो जब बुद्धा चुप हो गए तो मेटाफिजिक्स इनके लिए वहीं खत्म हो गया. इसमें मैंने वो भी आपको बताया था, वैदांतिक वाली बात. हाँ, अब ये बताएं, what is the importance of the Buddhist concept of नाम रूप in the exposition of the doctrine of dependent origination? What is नाम रूप? नहीं, वो था संज्ञा, वो था रूप, संस्कार, पंच स्कंध, चीजें कनेक्टेड हैं बिल्कुल. अभी कॉन्टेक्स्ट में बताइए. हाँ हाँ, तो इन सम वे प्रतीक समुत्पाद, द्वादश निदान, अविद्या, संस्कार, विज्ञान. नाम रूप is when we take birth as a baby. अभी हम लोग अब बेबी बन के बाहर आए, ये था एम्ब्रायो. We were in the mother's womb. नाम रूप के बाद सडायतन. And then spurs, vedana, trishna, upadan, bhav, jati, jada, maran. So what is the importance of this? What is the importance of the Buddhist concept of Nam Roop in the exposition of the doctrine of dependent origination? बताइए इसका significance. ये बात आप लिख सकते हैं शुभम. शून्यवाद वाले में भी ये सब बातें हम लिख सकते हैं. That while it is not a philosophical doctrine, metaphysical theory, it has emphasized on the cessation of suffering. तो वो जैसे जो लाइन आपने और पढ़ा था उससे पहले, the doctrine of Pratit Samutpad was given only to explain the problem of sorrow and not to solve the problem of metaphysics. You can use it in 2011 is the Shunyavad, the philosophical doctrine. After all of this, that as I said, that for Nagarjuna, Shunyavad is a philosophical method, or Shunyavad helps us understand the emptiness or devoidness of all philosophical doctrines. Sarvadrishti Shunyata. It argues that the doctrine or the teachings of Pratit Samutpad is given. Yeah, the teaching Buddha has given us his 4 Arya Satya to explain the problem of sorrow and remove it, and not to create metaphysics. Buddha himself remains silent when metaphysical questions are put before him. अब उसमें जैसे मैंने आपको लिखाया ना कि शून्यता के implication, significance, all of that you must write, but as a metaphysical doctrine, it is not there. Okay. So it has, ये लिख सकते हैं, it has a geological significance, it has teleological significance, it has epistemological significance, and it is never ever giving us any metaphysical position. Though, while you are talking about epistemology, ethics, it is saying that truth is sampriti, parmarth, it is bhut koti, all of that, but it is not giving you any definite answers. तो इसमें नाम रूप में basically the present life where we are now, we are located as a psychophysical being, and we have to come out of rag, dvesh, moha. As long as we are under the influence of rag, dvesh, moha, we'll keep on performing interested action, we'll keep on earning merits and demerit, and in a vicious cycle, birth, death would continue. तो पूरा आपको याद करने की जरूरत नहीं है, because it may not be easy, और इतना टाइम दें बाद में उस दिन भूल जाएं तो कोई फायदा नहीं है. You go for the story. So if there is ignorance, we perform interested action, we come under the influence of rag, dvesh, moha. Every action which is performed with vested self-interest is bound to fructify into fruits. Is bound to create fruits to be enjoyed, to be suffered. And due to law of karma, in a vicious cycle, one is coming and disappearing. So the only way to break this chain is to acquire right knowledge. So now how Ashtangik Marg can help us know that? As you know, Pragyashil, Samadhi, un sab baaton ko likhe. Is the concept of Nirvana a logical necessity for the Buddhists? Give reasons for your answer. हाँ, क्या बोलेंगे?
It is the part of 4 noble truths.
So the way it is again like nothing comes out of nothing. If there is a suffering and there is a cause of suffering, then nirvana becomes a logical necessity. So if this being that arises, then by removing the cause of suffering, suffering will be eliminated, and that is how nirvana is a logical necessity. And suffering is not just out of a chance. It is there because we are ignorant, and if there is ignorance, we can remove it as well. An examination of Buddhist Nairatmyavad. In this, you talk about Chanikvad, you talk about Budgal Nairatmyavad, Dharma Nairatmyvad, Artha Kriya Karitva, and of course, all of them are coming from Pratit Samutpad. Then you also discuss Anatmavad and thus Nirvana, whether they commit the fallacies of Kritipanash, Akritya, Bhyapagam. The Madhyamik philosophy tries to adopt the mean between extreme affirmation and extreme negation. Comment. The very name Madhyamik is from Madhyama Pratipad, and it suggests that no view can ever be absolute ultimate, so you should go for the middle path. 4 Arya Satya according to Buddhism. Discuss Pratit Samutpad in Buddhism. State and discuss the Buddhist notion of Shunyata, nature and kinds of Nirvana. ये बताएं nature and kinds of Nirvana.
Kinds of liberation.
Nature and kinds.
Nirvana is liberation, and nature can give state to the and another and
कुछ important बात है.
4 parts of liberation.
थोड़ा सोचिए, आंसर में कुछ सब्सटेंस आना चाहिए. एंड जब भी आंसर बोलेंगे थोड़ा सा इन्फॉर्म्ड लाइंस लिखिए. दो चार लाइन में बताइए. 2-4 लाइन में. हाँ, तो मुझे खुश करने का एम मत रखिए एग्जामिनर को. कैसे लिखेंगे? आंसर राइटिंग मस्ट बी टेकन वेरी सीरियसली. 2-4 लाइन मेन पॉइंट पहले. ये तो ठीक है शुभम, अब क्वेश्चन एड्रेस होना जरूरी है, उस पर फोकस कीजिए.
The nature of Nirvana can be achieved through the concept of Anatmavad, and it is the final destination of the 4 Arya Satya. For Buddhists, Nirvana can be achieved through Ashtangik Marg. Nirvana is of 2 kinds.
बेहतर कीजिए इसको। आंसर टाइप। तो कुछ बोलेंगे अभी, लिखते ही रहेंगे? नहीं, मैं चाह रहा हूँ आंसर शुड लुक लाइक वेरी ऑर्गेनाइज्ड एंड आंसर ऑफ द क्वेश्चन, और वो स्टेट ऑफ माइंड बदलने से होगा। पढ़ते समय ट्राई टू जस्ट बी केयरफुल, एंड व्हेन यू राइट यू ट्राई टू चेंज स्लाइटली योर आउटलुक, वेयर यू गो टू क्वेश्चन विद सम सेंस ऑफ प्रिसीजन। ये क्वेश्चन को भी थोड़ा सा लाइटली ले रहे हैं। थोड़ा सा बेहतर हुआ शुभम? हाँ।
According to Buddhism, the path to liberation, that is Dukh, Nirod, Marg, is given in four noble truths. According to Buddhist philosophers, Nirvana is the path to liberation, but there is difference between path of Theravada or Hinayan or early Buddhism and Mahayan Buddhism. For Hinayan, path to liberation can be achieved through getting away from cause of Dukh, that is ignorance, and following a strong marg, and therefore achieving Arhathood. But for Mahayan Buddhism, they focus on Bodhisattva marg to liberation, which means to achieve Nirvana after helping others to achieve.
काफी बेहतर है फिर भी। तो फॉर एग्जांपल again क्वेश्चन सेज नेचर एंड काइंड्स ऑफ निर्वाण, तो फर्स्ट थिंग यू शुड क्लियरली फर्स्ट रिकॉल निर्वाण कहाँ पे है। जैसे आपने भी फोर्थ से शुरू किया, तो पहले एकदम बेसिक छोटे छोटे स्टेप्स लेके कि नेचर एंड काइंड्स ऑफ निर्वाण। निर्वाण इज रूटेड इन थर्ड नोबल ट्रुथ, दुख निरोध। However, different schools of Buddhism differ with regard to nature and kinds of nirvana. What is the literal meaning of nirvana? Blown out. तो वो भी लिखिएगा। The literal meaning of nirvana is blown out. Okay. The Hinayanist and Mahayanist have some important differences with regard to, वो पहले भी आप लिख ही चुके हैं, तब आप बोलिए, सीधे आ जाइए आत्मदीपो भव पे भी। With regard to आत्मदीपो भव, Hinayanist believe that one has to perfect oneself like an arhat, so that one can come out of all one's suffering through self-effort without expecting any external intervention. Thus, nirvana is a state of no suffering, where there is complete cessation of suffering, and it is for an individual. For the Mahayanist, the ideal self should be bodhisattva. There is no atma, there is no individuality. We should replace egocentric worldview with selflessness. One must ensure everyone around oneself is as capable as bodhisattva himself. So a bodhisattva would delay one's own nirvana to make everyone around one as capable as oneself is. So thus, it is a state where nirvana is universal. It is not only cessation of suffering, but it is a state of bliss. For Hinayanist, nirvana is a state to be achieved, while Mahayanist believe sansar and nirvana are two aspects of the same thing. So one does not have to attain nirvana. One is already a Buddha within. तो ये बात भी आप उसमें emphasize करेंगे. Moreover, it is debated whether nirvana is a state to be attained after the death or before death. Followers claim it can be attained while one is embodied. That is, Buddha had attained nirvana while he was still with us in this life. तो इस हिसाब से आपने कई इंपॉर्टेंट कंपोनेंट को एम्फेसाइज किया, ठीक है। और उसके बाद ये लिखिए कि कैसे अष्टांगिक मार्ग, फोर्थ नोबल ट्रुथ, वहां भी ऐसे बोल सकते हैं that it is contained in third noble truth, दुख निरोध, and the path to attain nirvana is in fourth noble truth, अष्टांगिक मार्ग। तो कोई नई बात मैंने नहीं कही, बस आंसर राइटिंग के समय you have to have that sincerity and you try to think all over again what all were there on this topic. State and discuss the Buddhist notion of momentariness. आप देख सकते हैं same topics are there time and again. क्षणिकवाद of Buddhism, Buddhistic doctrine of प्रतीत समुत्पाद, Nagarjuna's defense of शून्यवाद, क्षणिकवाद, evaluate Nagarjuna's arguments for शून्यवाद, बोधिसत्व. Okay, तो ये सब important component हैं आपके Buddhism के. So very important school, and too many schools within the school we have covered as comprehensively as possible. Why? I think that one of the important reasons could be that Buddhist teachings are relatable and very easy to practice. In the case of Jainism, if you especially understand some aspects, then they also talk about not only Anuvrat but Mahavrat. And sometimes it may not seem possible for ordinary people to practice it. So the teaching of Buddha is something that you feel very easy to practice, and overall it is not trying to become someone very different. It is about change your outlook. No, जैसे कि मान लीजिए पंच व्रत है, तो पंच व्रत में you have to, in Digambaras one has to wear the sky clad. Shwetambaras have to completely be in white cloth. You may not even eat certain things. बाद में जो Buddhism है, उसमें even there are monks who may eat non-veg. In some way, it is ahimsa has been understood in a very contextual way with some intent. You have to live in this life, and at the same time you try to be in self-control. तो बहुत rigorous imposition नहीं है. It gives you space to find some of your own interpretations of life. So that is how probably one of the reasons could be that. And Buddha's stature is also very high in many ways. But it is not right also to put one against other. I think Buddhism has covered different parts of the world globally. These days I have seen this Nichiren Buddhism is also expanding. There are people who are committed to it. They organize many meetings. Okay. तो कई बार बुद्धिस्ट इसलिए भी बढ़िया है कि इगैलिटेरियन है, लेकिन वो सारी चीजें जैनिज्म में भी है. ओके नहीं, भ्राम मत समझिए उसको शुभम. स्वतंत्र विज्ञानवाद इज सजेस्टिंग that what reality is in itself and how you know it are two aspects of it. So when you think about this world, you should always understand that everything is with reference to you. You are at the center, whether it is metaphysical knowledge, whether it is your sense of being who you are, all of them are because of your construction. It is slightly like Kant's Copernican revolution also, where you create reality, and reality noumena has a very different character. The same thing which is coming, disappearing, has given rise to your being and is creating objects of the world. In some way, subject-object distinction is only at the level of human mind, and we all are again forming one same reality. इस हिसाब से स्वतंत्र विज्ञानवाद have tried to integrate logic, epistemology, philosophy of language also, and ethics तो बुद्धिज्म में हर जगह है ही, ठीक है? Okay, so now we have covered three heterodox traditions: Charvaka, Jainism, and the Buddhism. Now we'll come to Nyaya, and for us, Nyaya and Vaisheshik are one tradition, allied. In exam, if you have a question which talks about Nyaya, even then, if you write in answer somewhere Nyaya Vaisheshika, it will not be wrong. But what is your cue? If question says Nyaya, then you only write Nyaya. Like little while ago, there was a question discuss Buddhist and Vaisheshika's controversy. So there you'll be talking about Vaisheshik. However, the way we will study everything that is Vaisheshik, yes, everything which is about epistemology is going to be Nyayas, and all positions about metaphysics we will be talking or discussing is from classical Vaisheshik, and for us tradition has been Nyaya Vaisheshik, ठीक है? लेकिन अभी हम लोग पहले शुरू करते हैं न्याय से ही, बाद में जोड़ देंगे उसमें वैशेषिक. The founder is Gautam. He has another name, and there is an interesting story also I will tell you. Akshapad is another name, and the text is what? Nyaya Sutra. It is written around 2nd century CE. Okay. You understand now the journey. There is a foundational text, and what will happen? Commentaries will be written. Vatsyayan has written the first commentary, but this Vatsyayan is not the author of Kama Sutra. Okay, so commentary is written, and we have a few more important names. Like if you recall, I was talking about a text, Nyaya Kusumanjali. क्या था इस टेक्स्ट का सिग्निफिकेंस? न्याय कुसुमांजलि का एक दिन थोड़ा हमने रेफर किया था. हाँ, तो न्याय कुसुमांजलि is written by Udayan. And there are 9 proofs, arguments for the existence of God. And the arguments can be primarily a blend of cosmological, teleological, and moral arguments. And often the way cosmological is understood, the ontological argument is primarily rooted in West, but that idea of being absolutely perfect is often in the background of cosmological, teleological argument also. So we will be talking about one important name, Udayan's 9 arguments given in Nyaya Kusumanjali. We have seen the criticism where रिजेक्शन ऑफ दीज ऑलरेडी. अभी आर्गुमेंट देखना बाकी है, लेकिन हमने क्रिटिसिज्म देखा था कब, कहां, किससे? Jaina arguments against the existence of God, and they were directed towards these, particularly all other arguments, particularly against Nyaya Kusumanjali of Udayan. But later we get a few more thinkers, like I was telling about Swatantra Vijnanavad as a logical school. They are Buddhist logicians of middle period. We get later Gangesh. And Gangesh is again a logician, and he and others can be regarded as the exponent of Navya Nyaya also. We have a very important text, Nyaya Manjari by Jayant also. There is a very important text, Tark Sangraha by Anam Bhatt. And then we have Vishwanath, Bhasha Pariched, and one more text is very important by him, Nyaya Siddhant Muktavali. Gangesh has written Tattva Chintamani. तो ये सब क्वेश्चन कभी कभी हो सकता है आपसे इंटरव्यू में भी पूछ लें. And my hunch feeling is there is so much happening on Indian knowledge tradition. I will not be surprised if very soon in general studies one paper will be added, Indian knowledge tradition, and that will help student of philosophy, especially Indian philosophy. हम लोग जितनी चीजें पढ़ रहे हैं वो सब हो जाएगा Indian knowledge tradition का part. Okay. Okay, so now this is about some of the text. एक interesting कहानी बताऊंगा about the name, and that can help us understand also Nyaya. So let's start with the word Nyaya. What is Nyaya? न्याय, justice. Okay. कई बार बोलेंगे मुझे न्याय नहीं मिला, ये न्याय है, ये तो अन्याय है. तो क्या है न्याय? तो what is justice? That which is just. Very good. तो कैसे समझेंगे कि कोई चीज just है कि unjust है?
The most rational and ethical path.
हाँ, तो यानी तो शब्द आपने पहले निकाला rational. In some way, justice is that which is logical. Justice is that which is rational. If something is logical, rational, then it is like rule governed. Principles are followed. Okay, and that is why if something is rule governed, then ultimately it is likely that there are certain laws. There are some principles so foundational, owing to them, everything is there. So those foundational principles, cardinal principles, are to be followed in life. And then just का मतलब एक तरह से वही उसी की वजह से just is something very sustainable. Our model of development was unjust because that was against logic, reason, and we thought this model would sustain itself, but it started to backfire. everything was collapsing. But if something is, as we say, sustainable development, it is enduring. Like it is in accordance with our nature to stand in this way. And for several hours, 19 hours, I can stand, but no problem. But if I come and put my legs horizontally up, so not more than few seconds. तो ये just है, ये logic है इंसान के खड़े होने का. So this is like being logical, rational, critical in your outlook is nyaya. Okay. Now, any guess what would be the meaning of akshapad? What is
Aksha's eyes and Aksha's eyes and earth.
eyes है ये, aksh is eyes, हाँ.
Sense.
भी बोल सकते हैं, प्रत्यक्ष. Okay. तो प्रत्यक्ष में अक्ष is every इंद्रिय. तो अक्ष का एक मतलब है आंखें. Okay. What is a पाद?
We see means variety of things.
इस सेंस में जैसे हम बोलते हैं ना पादुका पुराण, feet. One who has eyes in one's feet. ये नाम है गौतम का. अब मान लीजिएगा they are friends, they would always put pictures कि आज यहाँ घूम रहे हैं, कल वहाँ घूम रहे हैं. तो you may say that you have wheels in your feet. पैरों में पहिए लगे हैं, तुम्हारे हमेशा घूमते रहते हो. तो जिसके पैरों में पहिए हैं वो घूम रहा है. किसी के पैरों में अगर आंख है तो उसका क्या मतलब है? हाँ, उसके पैरों में आंख है. So the legend is that Gautam would remain lost in contemplation. चल रहे हैं, he is lost in some deep thought, as people remain lost in WhatsApp and they don't see train is coming. They don't see some vehicle. They don't see that there is a manhole. So likewise, Gautam is completely occupied with some meditation, contemplation, thought, and he falls in a well. कुएं में जाके गिर गया. तो God thought of having mercy on him. कि बेचारा दिन भर सोचता रहता है, विचार विमर्श करता है. तो I will have to save him. तो एक तरीका होगा कि ये आंखें बंद हो जाती हैं तो पैर में आंखें दे देता है. तो his feet would see where I'm going. To understand the metaphor, if one has eyes in feet, तो इसका क्या मतलब? One who remains grounded, या one who would tread carefully. कहीं भी नहीं कि कहाँ चलना, चलो मारना है, चलो आज बेट के बहुत बदमाश हो गया ये, कुछ भी करके लोग आ जाते हैं. तो you have to think before you put your feet on a path. तो कुछ लोग बिना सोचे कोई रास्ते निकल जाते हैं. तो that is how your thinking, your discussions should be always so logical that you don't just walk aimlessly. तो तौल के आप कदम रखते हैं और इधर उधर गलत रास्तों पे आपके कदम नहीं पड़ते हैं. Even young babies who learn how to walk, they will be very careful. After 1 feet, they weigh all the options to put other. And if we are not very careful, we often fall down. So thus, metaphorically, Gautam has eyes in his feet. That means we all have to be careful. The path we follow to think, the path we follow to speak, the path we follow to walk, all of them should be thoroughly examined. So a man with a critical outlook can be called Akshapad, जिसके पैरों में भी हो आंखें. Okay. Okay. So primarily, Nyaya is well known for epistemology. Okay. And when we think about certain things with regard to epistemology, you know the word Prama. Prama is right knowledge. You understand? Praman. Praman is the means. Yes. So these, and in all we have discussed, how many Praman? 6. Out of 6, they accept 4. What is the first one, you remember? Pratyaksh. तो उसी ऑर्डर में जो मैंने आपको बताया, पहले 4 they will accept. So they accept 4 Praman. Pratyaksh, which is perception, Anuman, which is inference, Shabda, testimony or verbal testimony, and Upaman. What was Upaman? Comparison. Okay. So when you think about a Praman, it is like the right knowledge, and Praman is the means. So from these 4, you acquire right knowledge. And then you are there as the knower. So you become Pramata. Pramata. And what you know is object of knowledge, Prameya. Knower, object of knowledge. Okay, so in a way, if you stand and you see something as, let's say, a pot, a ghat, you say, there is a pot. So there is a pot is like judgment. Okay, how did you know? Pratyaksh. So you are there as a real, pot is there as a real object of knowledge. Okay, so Nyaya is a realistic tradition. They propound realism and pluralism, but indeed we will be focusing on their metaphysics gradually after these 4 Praman. But in some way, I will have to briefly also tell you about a few things here and there so that you can relate with their position. So we will be first covering these Praman. We have some time. We'll begin with Pratyaksh. You don't have to write. Anuman will be writing. Shabda Upaman is again in your handout. So we will continue. Most likely we'll be able to cover Pratyaksh properly. So let's know Pratyaksh. You already know the basics. What is Pratyaksh? Prati plus Aksh. When it comes to Nyaya, we have to follow what their texts say. Okay. In some way, Pratyaksh is like knowledge through sense object contact. Okay. Knowledge through sense object contact. I had told you something about Atman. And I had given you 3 important essential qualities that Shankar may accept. And then I had created some difference. In Nyaya, what Atman has in its original form. कौन सी वो चीजें थी? Essential qualities का नाम याद है? Satchit Anand. Out of Satchit Anand, whether all the 3 or none of the 3 or some of the 3 are there in Nyaya Vaisheshik. तो Nyaya Vaisheshik, हाँ, कुछ याद आया? In Nyaya Vaisheshik, Atman in its original form only exists. This is very special about Nyaya Vaisheshik. Atma or Atman has no consciousness as its essential quality. If something comes to something and then it does not remain intrinsic, you call it what? Accidental. So consciousness, in the case of Nyaya Vaisheshik, is not the essential quality. It is what? Accidental. In what form, at what stage Atma acquires a consciousness? As I said, we don't know their metaphysics, but briefly we'll have to know that. In the case of Nyaya Vaisheshik, as you know, Indian philosophy, you earn merit and demerit, and you will be given a body in accordance with your merit and demerits. We'll develop all of that. But abhi, this Atma is a spiritual reality. Okay, and then world is created, and Atma is given a body. So Atma is given a mind, Manas, and Atma is given a body. All right. So after the embodied state, the moment Atma is given a mind and it is given a body, what happens? There is this embodied self. Embodied self is conscious. When it is disembodied, it is not conscious. Okay? So as a member of this world, where now we are, the world is equally real. And every object which is with us is real. As a knower, we are now embodied self. And everything that is before us is also real empirically. Okay? So what is then Pratyaksh? This being with the senses, 5 external senses, and mind is internal sense. And as a knower now, you are the Atman. Okay? So on the basis of your Indriya, that knowledge you have through Indriya comes in contact. If now you come in contact with this pot, you say it is a pot and this is a perceptual knowledge. So thus, what is now Pratyaksh? Pratyaksh is when Indriya, senses, okay? Indriya comes in contact with external object. So Indriyarth, Sannikarsh, Janyam, Pratyaksham. क्या है प्रत्यक्ष? प्रत्यक्ष is the knowledge that is created when Indriya comes in Sannikarsh is like a close contact. It comes in contact, okay, with earth, object, okay. So when Indriya and earth comes in Sannikarsh, it gives rise to प्रत्यक्ष. जन्यम क्या है? जन्म लेना. तो प्रत्यक्ष कैसे जन्म लेती है? जब इंद्रिय और अर्थ एक साथ आते हैं. So basically, perceptual knowledge is created when senses come in contact with objects. ठीक है, समझ में आई बात? So this is the basic definition. But Nyaya Vaisheshik has already told us Atman in its disembodied state would remain what? Without conscious. So generally, when it comes to supreme knowledge, like Keval Gyan, in the case of Jaina, was Jeev embodied? Keval Gyan में क्या जीव embodied था? सब भूल गए जाना. बीच में बुद्ध के आ गए कि जैन ही भूल गए. जब तक पुद्गल बाहर ना आए, केवल ज्ञान नहीं. Ananda Chatushtay should not have any avaran. Avaran was due to matter. That is why karmic padarth. So when it comes out of that pudgal, it acquires absolute omniscience. Otherwise, there is always a degree. Avdhi mana priyay. तो संवर तक थोड़ा बहुत झिलमिलाहट है. निर्जरा के बाद पूरा 5G वाली clarity है. Okay. तो आत्मन in all other tradition, Buddhism में it is like again bodhi ज्ञान और प्रज्ञा. When you through samadhi you go beyond the body, you realize the ultimate. So liberation, even if there is embodied state, actual state is when you have no body. तो अपरोक्षानुभूति. Jaina में भी परोक्ष अपरोक्ष ज्ञान. In the case of Vedanta also, Shankar would know it as aparoksha ज्ञान. So somehow, when it comes to supreme knowledge, it is actually not through senses. जैसे आपने Jaina में भी लिखा that they say aparoksha ज्ञान is not through the mediation of senses or mind. It is directly from soul. In the case of all other traditions, Atma will remain conscious and it can attain supreme knowledge without the help of senses. But in the case of Nyaya Vaisheshik, Atma will remain conscious only when it is with the senses and the mind. So when Atma is connected with the mind is connected with the senses, it becomes conscious. So they have to talk about supreme knowledge as a perceptual knowledge. And then they say Pratyaksh can be Laukik and Pratyaksh can be Alaukik. Further, for them, we are Atman and we are as Atman individual. And God is also like Param Atman. Okay, but without a body. In the case of God, God is supremely perfect. But in some way, that kind of immediate knowledge will be there. And even you can know God immediately. Okay, so they need to emphasize on what? Alaukik Pratyaksh, which is not, it is like intuitive in nature, direct, immediate, but it is not through senses. The Pratyaksh is defined in this manner. Indriyarth, Sannikarsh, Janyam, Pratyaksham. So they struggle in explaining Alaukik Pratyaksh. So there is another definition now. And that is, याद रखने में आसान रहेगा. साक्षात प्रतीति, साक्षात. तो what is प्रत्यक्ष? दोनों याद रखना. इंद्रियार्थ, सन्निकर्ष, जन्यम, प्रत्यक्षम, and then Sakshat Pratiti. In some way, it does take care of this also. So if you see something like a flower, it is also direct and immediate. So the kind of alaukic pratyaksh you will see, that will be very different, but there is some kind of immediacy and directedness in pratyaksh which is maintained, and this is like the another way to define pratyaksh. लेकिन आप दोनों को याद रखेंगे. तो अभी तक आपने ये जाना pratyaksh is something which is through indriyarth sannikarsh, there is a directedness, immediacy, it is sakshat pratiti. Now there are some classification further. So we will come to alaukic pratyaksh. Now come back to laukik. Okay, so laukik pratyaksh can be of two kinds to begin with, or you can also understand it as stages: indeterminate perception and determinate. Indeterminate and determinate. This is like nir, vikalp, and this can be sa, vikalp. So the term is vikalp. What is a vikalp? Conceptualization. Conceptualization. So nirvikalpa is without conceptualization, pure awareness, mere sensation. And this is sensation with conception. It is like the way in Western we had seen something like percepts and something like concepts. At this level, it is like percept without concepts are blind. It is without concept, so it is not a state of aware. It is not like a state where you can meaningfully talk about it. It is a mere awareness. And here it is like percept with concept. In other words, whenever you know that this is, let's say, a pot, it is a savikalp, but you realize that before I articulated it, there was a state which was not a state of realization, but it was inferred from here. यानी जब ये sense object contact था, it was indeterminate. You could not gather it, you could not articulate it meaningfully, no. You know at this stage, but then you can infer in a way that this determinate state must have been preceded by that. It is like, to understand, if say we are at the 99th floor in some building, क्या नाम है, Burj Khalifa type. So it goes without saying that we all have used some elevator and or lift, and that is why we are there. So जब हमने जाना, तो एक time था जब senses had come in contact with object. So this is determinate. Indeterminate state is a mere awareness, a mere sensation. There is no meaning, there is no content in it. It is a devoid of conceptualization. ठीक है? तो लगभग कांट वाली बात है, क्योंकि concept नहीं है तो blind है, and यहाँ पे percepts with concept is meaningful. Okay? So this was one important difference between determinate and indeterminate, nirvikalpa, savikalpa, pratyaksh. We will revisit in all other traditions what could be nirvikalpa, savikalpa for them. Now, sannikarsha, you remember? Indriyarth Sannikarsha in logic. So there will be different kinds of sense object contact. So that may take a little long. लेकिन एक line में quickly बात बोल देता हूँ, which is another classification of perception as external perception and internal perception. So if we are thinking, we are doubting, something is a pleasure, something is a pain, all of these are what? Internal perception. How do we know? We know it through our internal sense organ. What is that? Mind, manas. Mind is not one with the soul in Indian tradition. Okay. And what is external? When through external senses, 5 external senses, you go to the outer world. Okay. So we will learn 6 kinds of sense object contact. Then we'll know extraordinary perception, alaukic. कितने होंगे उसमें? 3 होंगे. Okay. And afterwards we'll come to Anuman. We will understand it comprehensively. We'll take down the notes, and then we'll come to Shabda Upaman. हाँ बताएं शुभम. Logic is empirical with ordinary pratyaksh. English equivalent यहाँ पे उसको ordinary बोलना ठीक रहेगा. Alaukic is extraordinary. So extraordinary, it is not primarily through senses. Senses play some role, but it is extraordinary, and why we'll see that. Not to take any philosopher in a literal sense. नहीं, literal sense का मतलब मैंने पता नहीं किस context में कब क्या बोला. I would have said that you will not follow any philosopher as the only one, and often you will try to interpret their teachings as allegory also. तो अभी जैसे बुद्धा की भी जो अगर teachings हैं या जैना के भी teachings हैं, तो आपको फिर से उसको internalize करना है, and you should not accept any position as final. तो जैसे मैंने उस context में कहा था एक दिन that you have to become Vaitandik. You should have no view of your own. लेकिन शायद आप इस बात को समझे नहीं है context में, क्योंकि I would not have said that don't take any philosophy in literal sense. Of course, Plato का form don't take it in a literal sense, but try to make it intelligible. Form, like in our case also, what is the original India is like the ideal India. It is like, again, the perfect form of India, and it is not the India which now you see outside you in space and time, because what we may see around us is less than perfect India. तो उस context में आप उनको literally ना ले कि एक India अभी exist कर रही है इस world के parallel. कहने का मतलब है the India of 2024 is now before us, and when we adopted our constitution in 1950, so that time, if we were here in 1950, we were thinking about India. Let's say this is the real India. In 2024, we are further closer to that. And likewise, no matter how much close we come, it keeps on going further up. लेकिन ये इंडिया एक दिन रियलिटी में आ जाएगी इन प्रिंसिपल, बट इन प्रैक्टिस वी विल ऑलवेज रिमेन ए लिटिल लोअर देन द परफेक्ट इंडिया. तो उस सेंस में एलिगरी का इंपॉर्टेंस है, सिमिली का इंपॉर्टेंस है, माइथोलॉजी का इंपॉर्टेंस है टू मेक फिलोसफी मोर मीनिंगफुल. उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में अब किसी ने मैंने कुछ कहा है तो दैट इज लाइक फिलोसफी एज आर्ट ऑफ इंटरप्रिटेशन. इवन हाइडेगर टॉक्स अबाउट व्हाट hermeneutical engagement. So don't take things literally as in what you may think is ahimsa. Ahimsa could be much more than that. What you may think God is, God could be much more than that. What could be religion or all the religions of the world, if you try to understand that, it is much more than what a particular individual would tell you. उस केस में लिटरली नहीं लें. तो इंडियन फिलोसफी पे भी वो चीज वैसे ही लागू होगा कि मोक्ष का मतलब क्या है, ये आप अब बनाइए. और एक तरह से if you say I want to be a civil servant and save our परमो धर्मा, this is your idea of मोक्ष. तो अगर आप किसी को आज बोलते हैं कि मैं आईएएस बनना चाहता हूँ, तो वन में appreciate it. But earlier there was no such a term. तो बोलते थे कि मुझे मोक्ष प्राप्त करना है. आज बोलेंगे तो लोग बोलेंगे कि आज दवाई नहीं खाएंगे. तो बात वही है. लेकिन कहने का तरीका बदल गया कि मोक्ष का मतलब है लिबरेट करना लोगों को. और आईएएस क्या करेगा? लिबरेट करेंगे लोगों को. तो आईएएस बनने के लिए you will have to first liberate yourself from all the weaknesses and then you will liberate people from birth based slavery. तो उसी का नाम है मोक्ष. ठीक है? तो इस सेंस में लिटरली चीजों को नहीं लेना. और चलिए, थैंक यू. सी यू ऑल टुमारो एट 5:30 PM.